Hey y'all, what's up with real deal and back into this reaction? Now you know where we stopped at, and so we're gonna finish out with Tated uh school of business. So we're gonna finish it out, okay?
I mean, does that impair cognition and other temperaments in an individual that uses?
Cognition, thinking, deliberation, controlling behavior, risk taking. There's even something that I just recently learned, that episodic memory impairments. One of the applications of that is that people get so messed up using methamphetamine, but they continue using it. Now they're addicted to it, but they forget how bad they were during their last near-death binge. So yeah, but it's cognition and it just wipes out thought processes. There's no control over thoughts. And there's no control over behavior.
Impairs memory?
Methamphetamine, yes, it does impair memory.
Marijuana as well?
Yes.
With regards to methamphetamine, can that drug cause someone to have violent behavior?
Oh, yes. Violent behavior, and also part of the violent behavior is the criminal element of people robbing and shooting you to get your drugs or steal your money that you're using to buy drugs. But yes, violent behavior, violent attacks on individuals, attacks on police officers, suicides, homicides. One of the most predictably violent and aggressive stimulating drugs.
Fair to say that the more meth you use, the worse it gets as far as violence, aggressiveness?
That's fair, but I would have to be caution that not everybody's going to have the same extent of the violence, which is good, because otherwise we'd have many more, considering the number of methamphetamine users in our population. We have many more drug-induced homicides, methamphetamine attacks.
Dr. O'Donnell, is it your testimony that meth use alters the brain chemistry?
It absolutely, yes, it is my testimony. That is my opinion. That's well described. That's how it causes the high, by altering the brain chemistry. It's just you do it too much and invade. There's some literature that describes eventually the methamphetamine users develop Parkinson-like disease because their brain chemistry has been so messed up when they were young that the consequences are that they're at much greater risk for developing Parkinson's and at earlier age than Parkinson's is seen. Parkinson's is someone with movement disorders and has trouble walking and controlling their muscles.
Is it your testimony that methamphetamine use, chronic acute use, can create delusions, hallucinations, psychosis?
Yes, it is.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah, just briefly, Doctor. So I wanted to pick up where we left off there. You said that, chronic methamphetamine use, alters the brain chemistry. Is that right?
Yes.
And is that something that can be unaltered in some way, the brain chemistry?
Pardon?
Is that something that can be unaltered in some way, the brain chemistry?
with many, in regular circumstances, the chemical changes that are induced by a drug do go back to normal in certain circumstances, certain drugs. So the answer is yes.
Okay, but so I mean, you're saying from a young age, chronic use of methamphetamine, fundamentally changes the brain. Is that consistent
Yes.
with what you said? Okay, so then that chronic use at some point, is that able to be reversed in some manner?
Any damages are permanent.
Okay. And I guess one of the damages of long-term meth abuse, I think you said no control over thoughts, no control over behaviors.
That was acute.
Oh, for acute.
That was
use.
acute.
Okay.
The damages of chronic methamphetamine use is that there can be psychosis, there can be lapses into psychosis. It can, and it can worsen any other mental illnesses. That's the major risk. Methamphetamine use doesn't cause mental illnesses. Methamphetamine use can exacerbate mental illnesses while it's being used.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you're not a psychologist, right?
No, sir.
Nor a psychiatrist.
I am not.
So you rely on some of those prior diagnoses in reaching some of your opinions, though, right?
Yes, I'm relying on diagnoses made by psychiatrists and psychologists.
Okay, and I think you said the principal one was bipolar 1 that Mr. Business had.
Yes,
That was a prior diagnosis that was made.
yes.
That was nothing you, I guess, are capable of diagnosing.
Right, I would not diagnose that.
Okay, so if a court-appointed psychologist in the case found there was, quote, no credible evidence she has an underlying mental illness such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or a like condition, you wouldn't be able to dispute that, right?
No, I think it would be no, I would not dispute that.
Okay. But, obviously using these prior diagnoses helps form your current opinion about her mental state. Is that right? These prior diagnoses of bipolar 1, schizoaffective.
I used prior diagnoses and subsequent diagnoses to identify the mental illness that she had and has, and then I considered the effects of methamphetamine without mental illness, methamphetamine with mental illness, the effect of methamphetamine on any mental illness, and the effect of the inability or the non-treatment for mental illness that puts her at risk for behavioral alterations and also greater risk of impairment and toxicity from methamphetamine use. Again, it sounds like it's a lot of moving parts, but I hope hope it described it so it's not confusing.
Sure. So the information you're relying on in terms of the acute methamphetamine on the date of this incident, that's information that comes from Schabusiness, right?
It comes from Schabusiness. Yes, it does, and it's corroborated by the toxicology reports of the victim.
So her intoxication level is corroborated by the toxicology results of some
Well,
person?
if they're using methamphetamine together, and he's a source of methamphetamine, and she's an addict of methamphetamine, she's going to use methamphetamine. And that's the underlying basis for me believing that when she said she used methamphetamine during those activities.
Sure, but you have no information about the amount she used?
No, I don't.
Or the exposure she had previously or tolerance she had?
I assume she had tolerance. The amount she used previously, with frequency, I don't know whether I got that in my notes or not, and I don't have my notes, so I don't know exactly. But she, in part of her treatment, she was identified as having methamphetamine use disorder and cannabis use disorder, as well as bipolar 1. I think that those were the diagnoses at the Nicolette Treatment Center, which was not too long before the homicide.
Yeah, sure, in 2021's, but in terms of objective evidence of her intoxication under methamphetamine, marijuana, whatever substance the night of this incident, you have no information.
I have no toxicology tests from her, and I didn't witness her use the drug. I wasn't there.
And I guess she said she used 51 hits. So did she tell you that, or?
No, she did not. I just heard that last night on the phone and this morning in
Okay.
court.
All right, but that would be something you've never heard of before in your.
I had never heard of that before.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. I have nothing further.
You're welcome.
Mr. Freilich, will you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, doctor. You can sit down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Other witnesses, Mr. Freilich.
No, Your Honor. I have no other witnesses other than possibly my client. I have to talk to her about that.
Okay. Well, we started late this morning. It's 11:45, so we've been going about 2 hours.
Didn't witness.
We all go through.
All right, y'all, I had to unmute my mic. They back
Be seated.
from the break.
Okay, Mr. Freilich.
Your Honor, my client will make some comments as part of her right of elocution after the arguments of counsel.
Okay, all right, very good. Then my thought had been that if Ms. Schabusiness was going to testify, we'd probably take a break for lunch and come back. But given that she's not going to testify, she's going to use her right of elocution. My thought is we just proceed right to arguments and then sentencing. Any objection to that, Mr. Saunders?
No, that's fine.
Mr. Freilich?
No, that's fine.
All right, so then, I know, Mr. Saunders, you had indicated there was something regarding the victim impact statement you wanted to do. Was it going to be read in, or how did you want to handle that?
I believe now two family members of the victim wish to orally address the court judge.
Okay.
I think just orally is a victim impact statement. So.
Very good, and if they want to come up and stand, there's a microphone right above. If you want to stand right between those two pillars there, they can stand right there. If you could just tell me your name first, sir.
Kelly Therian, Chad's uncle. I basically just wanted to say that there's no excuse for what you've done. I don't care if it's drugs or upbringing, you know. We all go through hard times growing up, at least the majority of us have. You have the opportunity to change that. You have the opportunity to, you know, see that you have a problem. I've been in recovery a little over 3 years in AA. I drank for 41 years. I realized I had a problem. So there's just, basically to me, you took the easy way out. It's you did the most cowardly, weakest things that you could do possible. You know, you meet a person in school, you say he's your friend, you become friends, become girlfriend, boyfriend, lovers, gain his trust of an innocent person that's very kind, would do anything for you. And I believe you used that and you had this plan and took your opportunity when you did. There's no excuse, you know, I don't see it no other way. To take advantage of someone's kindness like that, that's like the most irritating thing. you know, you get to know somebody, they trust you, and then you do that. You say, and then you say that you're a friend, you're his friend. You said that in the statements. It's like, man. But you know, I walked into a program and it's free. You know, you can go get help and it's free. All over the place there's help. And it doesn't cost a dime, you know. It's either, and the first thing they tell you in there, you know, you want to continue doing what you're doing. It's going to be jail, it's institution, or death. And you chose that path. You chose the wrong path. They sit here talking about being rehabilitated. Is Shad's mother going to ever rehabilitate from this? No, but you can go to an institution, you can go to prison and try to be rehabilitated, but I don't see no reason why you'd have parole after the doctor had just mentioned once you have so much damage that it's irreversible. You know, so why would don't make no sense to me even to have the option of parole to come back and to gain someone's trust like that again. You know, because that is like the lowest thing a person can do. You know what I mean? I just don't understand that. And the biggest thing is, you know, it, like I said, you know, the help is free and it's there. You chose not to take, you know, I'm sure you knew you had a problem, you know. You can't blame it on childhood. You know, there's help out there. And if you take the path to go get the help, you wouldn't be in this situation right now. None of us would be in this situation. But to take the cowardly path that you did and to make other people suffer because you were suffering is pretty shitty. So that name, Taylor Schabusiness, fits you well. And I'm not a praying man, but after Judge Walsh's sentences today, I will pray that you meet the same fate as your idealistic Jeffrey Dahmer. So have a good life, shit business.
And then the next speaker will be a statutory crime victim, so we'd ask the media to be advised of that, Judge.
Okay. I just want to, all right, they're indicating they are going to make sure that they're not video.
She don't know why she looking like that. She don't know what he just said. She don't know what this.
Okay, if you could just, sir, before you start, if you just say your name for the record.
Michael Therian.
Go ahead.
Taylor, I just wanted to say that I forgive you for what you've done to my son. And
Look at her.
yeah, you made a bad choice, and now you have to live with it. But you know, I'm gonna miss Shad. He was a wonderful child too. Growing up, just mild mannered and just happy, and I know you made a bad choice, and like I said, I forgive you, and I'm gonna ask Judge if you can, you know, if she can see the streets again sometime. You know, it may not be soon, but I believe everybody makes bad choices, and maybe not to the scale, but I think there's a lot of hope for you. I think, you know, you can make use of your time and be a better person.
What's wrong with him?
Do great things yet. You know,
What she did to your son? Look how
does
she
no good for
looking.
me to hate you. You know, I know you got a heart. I know you got a mind, and I wish you no harm. And I hope things go well for you. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Look how she looking.
Any other witnesses or people I want to speak? Mr. Saunders.
No, I don't believe so.
Very, very good. Then I'll turn to the state for a sentencing recommendation.
Thank you. So ultimately, the state's recommendation is that the defendant not be eligible for release at any point to extend its supervision. And obviously, we're here for legally and morally the most serious offense somebody can commit in this state. And really, I think a few points bear emphasis. I'm not going to rehash the entire trial testimony for the court. Um, methods of ending another person's life that we've seen in this county and certainly in a significant period of time. So it's one thing we sometimes see intentional homicides where there is a bad choice. There is a decision in a moment of anger or whatever it is to pull a trigger on a gun or to hit somebody in anger. And while that intent exists when they're committing that act or when they're pulling that trigger, it's sometimes rather fleeting. The manner, as we heard from the defendant herself, explain how she ended Chad's life. This really wasn't a bad decision. It was a series of conscious efforts. It was continued effort over, as she said, 3 to 5 minutes, as she's telling and describing for Detective Groff and Detective Kemp, pantomiming how she's pulling harder, how she's glibly talking about how he's turning purple, and I liked it. I'm pulling harder. He's coughing up blood. I'm pulling harder. I kept going. I was waiting for him to die. This really is an involved process. It's a method of ending another person's life that really is quite significant. And I think evinces some significant concerns going forward, both in looking at the nature of the offense as we have to, but in looking at some of the other factors the court's to consider, and which I'll be commenting on earlier. It's really one of the most horrific ways to end a person's life. And again, it's bad enough to do to anyone, but as we heard, there was this level of trust and friendship and familiarity between the two, which I think is just really makes the acts of the defendant really incomprehensible in that respect. You have obviously the method
no control over StreamYard.
And I do think that's an extremely aggravating factor. I recall Dr. Tranquita's testimony from trial talking about the amount of effort and volition and choice that would have to be done to undergo what the defendant did over a period of hours. This was not again, one bad choice in some respects. It was the choice to end his life in the first place, certainly a bad choice, but continued bad choices throughout the next day, throughout the morning and into the night, where she's finally stopped by law enforcement. It's really the three convictions that Ms. Schabusiness was convicted of, I think are just really some of the more egregious conduct that the court will sentence a person on for some time. We saw, the court saw the entire 8-hour interview in the course of the litigation. We saw portions of that interview as she's describing this to law enforcement. And really, we see really from moment one, and that continued throughout the pendency of the proceedings in the case, to her comments in the PSI. We'll see what the allocution is today, but really a lack of remorse or understanding or appreciation, I guess, is in some respects of the conduct that she's engaging in. We saw her calmly describe what happened, at some points being rather glib and smirking about what she had done. As we see later in the PSI, having very little remorse for what she's done. And ultimately, the defendant, we've heard a lot about drug use and mental health history, which I'll comment on later. But really, the defendant herself is telling us why this happened. And it wasn't because methamphetamine. It wasn't because of mental illness. She's telling law enforcement why this happened. It happened because she liked it. It's because she wanted to do it. And again, throughout the entirety of this case, we see this underlying motive is essentially, it's kind of consistent, right? We see, and we have seen acts of acting out, both in court and to examiners who are seeing her. It's consistent in the state's view with a lack of remorse, of understanding of the conduct that she engaged in. And I think that's all consistent. I think it's all an aggravating circumstance for the court to consider at sentencing. And I want to talk to, because impact on the crime victims is a factor the court considered. And I want to comment on that in two respects. First, the perseverance of this family to have the attitude they have about the case and about Taylor is admirable. Is to hear the things they've had to hear and experience the things they've had to experience, I think is tremendous. So the thought of the defendant having perpetrated this act and impacting them in that way, I think is incredibly concerning. I also, it was heartening, as I've been the prosecutor for many months on this case and in reading the PSI, getting to know more about Shad, and I want to comment on that because unfortunately the case we've heard, really everything we've heard about him has been in the context of what Taylor did to him. And it's really unfortunate that that's the memory that some people will have about him. And again, that's a result of the defendant's acts to, in some respects, really tinge the memory that some may have of him. And I don't want that to be the case, but we heard the good. We heard how he was a good and a quiet kid, how he would always hug his dad on the way out of before he left the house, how he would read and knit and crochet with his younger sister. And that's the person the defendant took out of this world. You know, for all the talk about how young the defendant is, Shad was 24 when he passed. So all the things we hear the defendant wants to experience in life, she still has that opportunity in a confined setting. And simply put, Chad does not. So the impact on the crime victims, I think, is significant. We then look at Schabusiness's character. I guess I'll first comment on the prior history, which we consider, and I guess we're also sentencing on. There are 3 prior convictions. She was just placed on probation 6 weeks before this offense, and appropriately so. In reviewing the complaints, she kicked an officer. There's indications of methamphetamine or other substance abuse that led to that conduct. She then, in the fleeing case, fled at 80 miles an hour down the downtown Green Bay when it's populated with bar patrons and other pedestrians walking down the street. She's hopping curbs. She's not stopping. She's blowing through red lights. Again, there was indicia that drug use was at play there. And those were both in 2020. So as we heard earlier, there was ample time in reviewing the materials. Efforts were made to address the underlying substance abuse issues. She was placed on probation, and really nothing of much was accomplished in that short period of time. The little that was accomplished, she absconded from electronic monitoring. She cut off the bracelet and really then obviously engaged in misconduct. So the state agrees that, considering this idea of rehabilitation, and that's always a goal, but in some respects that opportunity was afforded both during the criminal cases and in reviewing all of the materials at many points throughout her life, and unfortunately either was not followed through with, was not taken seriously, and I think that's a concern going forward. We consider the background of the defendant, and I echo the comments earlier. That's not a childhood. That's not an early adolescence that anyone should have to go through, and that's it's really difficult to hear some of that stuff. But when we consider that sort of background information, unfortunately, we deal with a lot of people who have substance abuse issues in the criminal justice system that lead them to make choices they wouldn't normally make, that leads them to become thieves or become burglars or become misdemeanor offenders. Really, I'm not sure we have a nexus here between that underlying substance issue or mental health history and the conduct that we're sentencing her for today. Certainly, we've had a lot of litigation or testimony about the mental health history of the defendant. The court-appointed experts called a majority of that into doubt, and obviously the jury disagreed that there was any mental disease or defect that led to this behavior. And I comment on that because it's one thing just to say this person has a mental health history or a substance abuse history, and it's important to note, but really why that's relevant at sentencing is it's sometimes a nexus or it's a explanation for one's conduct that maybe then would lead towards maybe rehabilitative efforts. I'm not sure in the case there's that nexus between the prior drug history, mental health history to the extent there is one, and the defendant's conduct here. It appears there was methamphetamine use. We don't know how much, and we don't know, given some of the comments of the defendant after the fact, how much that impacted her decision making. Certainly probably didn't help, but we, as the doctor said today, we've now had this long period of essentially forced sobriety, and we're seeing aberrant behavior throughout that time. Certainly, obviously, nothing to the extent of what she did to Shad, but I comment on that because yes, there are those histories, and rehabilitation is always a goal of the criminal justice system. And I would think most people in the public in the
Got ants? Don't call any pro. Call the Orkin Pro. Orkin, the best in pests.
I'm time enough, y'all. I was trying to get them time enough to skip. I was gonna skip it, but I didn't want to skip it and miss out on something. So let's kind of like skip it a little bit, y'all. I want to get to the bottom line. That's what I want to really do.
But
I,
they
I
don't.
got that.
They
Hold
they
up.
have disappointed her.
Hold up, y'all.
Do you believe that your granddaughter Taylor Schabusiness should
Hold on. Let me see. What?
be given the chance to
I don't know why it's looking like this. I'm having trouble. But yeah, what I'm gonna do is
possibly be on parole or extended supervision sometime in the future?
I understand this. So why is it looking like this? Okay, what I do, I just play it.
I do believe. I know that she committed a crime, and I know that they want her to pay for it. But I believe that she should have the opportunity to come back to society one time and be with her son.
Yeah, I can't get it to. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. No further questions from me.
Any questions, Mr. Saunders?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Were you intending that she was going to stay on the Zoom, or you can certainly disconnect now if you want, ma'am, or you can remain on. But having said that, Mr. Freilich, do you have another witness?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. It's totally up to the court, but if, in my opinion, if she wants to stay on, I would ask the court to consider allowing her to do that.
I think I just told her that. So
Okay,
she
okay.
can stay on if she wants.
Okay, thank you. Next, then I would call Valerie Armour.
Um,
I'm gonna skip it a little bit, y'all. This is going too slow for me.
You have to get the microphone on.
Oh, sorry. Is it on?
Day, she completely changed. It's a different person.
Wait a minute. I did all of this. Hold on.
You know,
I did this. What is it doing? I'm back a bit. Okay, y'all. I'm trying to find a point where it stopped. So we'll be right back. Okay, that ain't it. That ain't it. That ain't nothing. That's outside. So let me come out of here and see what they got, y'all, so we can finish it out because this trial here was really bored. Let me see. I don't know why. I don't know why it stopped like that. Okay, so we're gonna look and see how they did their closing argument. Seems like they stopped, y'all. Yeah, it seemed like they stopped it. They stopped the video. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to get the verdict. Hold on, yeah. Well, okay, real deal. We gonna start right here. I guess they'll start back tomorrow. Yeah, they're gonna start back tomorrow. Cause I didn't get the sentencing part. The sentencing, but evidently they stopped it. But wow, I wanted to go back through some of her trial dates. Like day 1 and day 2, 3, and 4. So I can really hear what she did. Let's see. So what we do is we'll stop right here. And y'all, I'll get with y'all later, okay? I'm out.